Yeah, yeah, my main job is to draw concepts of future products, models, and of course creating a lot of visuals for Soren especially. Yeah, yeah, everything that should be visualized, I'm doing this. So yeah.
Cool. Thanks a lot. And then let's get on with the show. So basically, before I start yakking on about all the things that Lego is, we were actually just wanted to put this challenge out to you all for the dialogue in, as you say, building urban spaces and rebuilding Ukraine. One thing is rebuilding houses. Another thing is actually how can you hopefully inspire from what we're talking about today with the values, with the ways of working and so on. How can you think of ways of thinking playful in rebuilding? Let me just go here, and different in what we do. And can you think of what playful initiatives there could be? Like, could there be something? No, I don't want to suggest anything. Sorry. But then let's open the floor once I'm done with ideas of inspired from what we've been telling here. I know Anna will also sit in the side sketching a little bit on what this could mean. And please post it in the chat, either ideas or thoughts you might have, or let's keep it as an open discussion. It's not like we will end on presenting things, but hopefully just to give you a perspective that when we are rebuilding, we don't have to do things as usual. Maybe we can be a bit more fresh and be a bit more, playful and, be there for the kids when we're there. So that's, of course, one thing that you can think of while I present, but also, of course, we are, this is, of course, a really, really burning issue to discuss. But if you also have questions regarding our Lego innovation and just Lego in general, of course, we'll also take those questions. But I think hopefully think of this while I speak, think about some of the principles I discussed and how can that actually inspire rebuilding Ukraine. All right. So let's get going. And if we look at what we will cover today, we'll go a little bit, so who are we? What's the Lego group all about? What do we stand for in terms of our beliefs? And then what is our innovation ways, our strategic priorities? I'm not going to go too much into, concrete toys and what we do, but it's much more the mindset behind what we're doing. So who are we? Lego Group is, you probably know it, most of you, but it's actually a family-owned Danish company, which actually means that we can allow ourselves to have an opinion, to be out in the world and want to make a change in play. And I'll get much back to that. If you didn't know, the Lego name actually originates from like God, which is play well in English. And it's sorry?
I know.
Sorry, someone is not turning their microphone off. Please mute your microphone.
All right. Good. Okay. We are also very been doing that and actually have these opinion. We're actually one of the third reputable brand in the world, meaning that in terms of our brand equity and our people's perception of the brand. We're present in 180 countries. We have over 24,000 people, and it's really seen as one of the influential companies. This is actually a new thing, and I'll get much back to it. Because Lego, being Danish, have been very, always been very quiet. We do toys, but now with the world is changing, we are really getting, I wouldn't say political, but we're at least taking a stand in terms of many of the agendas in the world, injustice to kids, sexuality, we're really taking a stand in what we do. So actually speaking of that, what is it actually we stand for? And I think hopefully again here, this is some of the inspiration, because what we can actually see with the world in change is that everybody believes that play is so important. So 96% of parents, said that play helped with the kids' development. And play has actually the power to unite. So 90% of parents said that the play helped bring not only the family together, but also the local community together in building solutions for the future. So it's really a part of being emotionally healthy that you play. And we also know this, especially from our Lego Foundation, that kids that have been traumatized or are in situations where there's like crises around them have an even higher need of playing things out. And no doubt kids want to play more. And in some of the industrialized countries, like, it's like taken away from either digital play or from just time in general. So there's actually less and less time to play. And that's actually what we believe as a company we want to change, because our belief as a company is that children are our role models. And we want to deliver that and our values through what we call system in play around imagination, fun, creativity, caring for the world, what you have, and then learning. And of course, the quality of our product. That's really what we want to emphasize, because then that in that way, with these values and these benefits, really to inspire and develop the builders of tomorrow. So you can almost see this, imagine kids of Ukraine rebuilding and being asked about how they want to see the future or the near future of your country. And I think that could be really interesting in some of the ways we work, where you always we think kids first and what they do. So that's our mission, to inspire and develop the builders of tomorrow. In order to do that, you can say the skills that kids need, and even adults, have really changed. It used to be that, kids were about, learning in school, be able to do their ABCs and their 1, 2, 3s. But what we call 21st century skills is now really what's been asked and what kids are doing. It's really about critical, problem solving. It's about creative solutions to things. It's critical thinking, being able to communicate with each other and to collaborate. We can see these skills actually merging through a lot of the things that both we are doing, but also how school systems are changing and how kids are involved in where society goes, like almost kid activists. Think of Greta Thunberg. Think of those guys that are actually shaping the future from a kid perspective. And that could be extremely interesting to look at. It's some of those things that we are, as a brand, really emphasizing, giving kids a voice in how they want to change the future. So with that said, then we mean by building all this and making this change, we actually have made this promise, our vision to the world. We want to be a global force for what we call learning through play. So we're actually, as I said, taking an active position that play is crucial to the world, but undervalued, not only in the playtime you do, but also in the role of developing skills and developing the world we live in. So what we mean by this learning through play is actually a good balance. A good play is never, a one toy. A good play is something that both is joyful to do. A good play is socially interactive. It's actively engaging. It gives meaning to the kids, but it's also something you grow with. And I think you can see here that in this case, it's really about how you ladder up and how you involve kids in this whole journey, that giving meaning to what we do. It might look like play, and we're just in this picture, constructing a house, but they're actually speculating about the future and where we can go. So this is really what we mean by learning through play. And so our approach actually as a company, this is of course what we want to deliver to the world, but we're also using this to generate our work culture. So within our talents, it's really to encourage leadership for all. So we've actually made these 3 principles of how we are thinking, ourselves as employees in the company, how we want to act, and being leadership for all. And these are brave, focused, and curious. And I think actually, please remember these words, because that's really a chance for you to make a mark also in the rebuilding of Ukraine, really to be brave, to be focused, and be curious. What I mean by these is actually about being curious is the most powerful thing you can do. It's your curiosity. Imagine what if, really go out there and seek. And I think what we have learned as a company is that, and especially within innovation, I'll get a little bit back to it, be curious, constantly ask the people that has the problems or that are sitting with the issues. Go out and be inquisitive. Go out and ask. You only really design a good solution if you are, basically solving someone's problems. And if you're not curious, you will never find out what's underneath the hood of what they are feeling, the unmet needs, what we call jobs to be done in some of the terminology, if you put a marketing lens on it. So this idea about employees being curious about the world, where are the kids? Where's the world going? Second is actually to be brave, because as we just established before, it is an ever-changing world, and we need to be brave. We need to act with courage because we care about the world we live in. And, seen from a distance, looking at Ukraine and sitting here in little Denmark, it is so interesting to see how brave Ukraine seems to be in this situation. And I think that, that's acting as a society, but also as an individual. How can you be brave? I'm talking here about how you challenge our management in decisions, but imagine changing the way that the future will look. And then finally, on these values as employees, be focused, be in the now and stand by your commitments. So one thing is chat and talking, but actually, if you have these beliefs, if you are brave enough and curious enough, be focused to get it out there, to stand by your word and build it up. So we actually see these three patterns here have changed the way we work at Lego. And we see, I just have one of my colleagues that had an idea 2 years ago. I want to make a change. I want to make a new play that's mission-based, and now is actually launching today because of that one person that had that dream about it. So it's really just to show how we're thinking as a company. So all this together in what we believe in as a company, and in basically also in how we want to work, is actually what we then apply into our strategic opportunities or priorities. And this is where we speak a little bit about how we work as a company, and maybe again here with you dealing in innovation or thinking about the future, what could be some of the principles you could apply? If you just look at what we are aiming to do as a company, it's really about constantly innovating the play we do. It's about innovating what we call our ecosystem, because what you have is quite unique in Lego is that since it's a family-owned company, we actually own our own channels, meaning what is the message we have in our stores, what is the message we have in Legoland, or what is so on and so forth. We can tie that together. And it's actually, today, and again, back to the inspiration for where to go, it's not just the products you buy on shelf, it's the full experience, it's the full culture around a brand that becomes interesting. How can this, building culture actually come out? And no doubt, of course, some of our objective is also the digital transformation, how we can still have the good play for kids, but also embrace the digital world we're in. And I think, as mentioned in the beginning, we don't want to just talk about positive impact. We want to really make a change in being a bit daring on products we launch. So we, just as an example, we've launched rainbow sets with everyone is awesome, we call it, for celebrating the choice of sexuality. We've done a lot of green products where some of all the trees that are now in Lego are made in sustainable material, and so on and so forth. That's really the name of the game. What is key here, and I don't want to go too deep into the actual processes, but I think to inspire you, and I mentioned it really, really links to the whole curious and brave, is that everything we do in innovation, we think and act audience first. And what I mean by that is that when we go out and develop new play experiences, we really go out and talk to the kids, talk to the parents. What is it they're struggling with in their daily life, in order to find out what play we can do for them. So I think a good example here is, you can see the girl here in the middle with what we call dots. It's born out of a long journey of talking to especially girls that found the whole building large structures very boyish, and they really wanted something that was pretty, cool, and wearable. So we actually innovated this line called Dots, where you can decorate the world and make graffitis and so on by using the little tiles as an expressive art. So that's just some of the principles of how we operate. And this focus of thinking and acting audience first has actually had a huge impact on what we do here, in terms of both our core experience and also the whole mission of seamlessly blending digital and physical play. So you can see here some of the things that we have done out of understanding where people are, is the dots, as I mentioned here, and also the focus on showing diversity in what we do. It's about integrating physical and digital play in the Mario, as you can see in the corner here, where you're really combining the best of what people can recognize from the Nintendo games and blending it with physical play, but also be there for the adults that like Lego and do products that are targeted or that are owned by adults, almost like and during COVID, a lot of people actually took this as a new hobby to build flowers, to build large structures, and so on and so forth. So that's really where we, kind of innovate play, both in terms of the core experiences, but also discovering new play. So that's where we are in terms of, getting closer and closer to where we operate, where we have this product and marketing development. This is basically where we innovate all these ideas. It's around 500 people from many, many different nationalities that are working together to build all these ideas. And as mentioned before, I don't want to go too much detail because we want to get on with the fun discussion and so on, but just to let you know that this is all the values, how we operate as a company. And when we innovate, there's basically two ways of doing things. So one thing is this very boring chart where you could say all the products we know how to do. So like the next police station and so on and so forth. There is a very solid process where we, during 1.5 years or approximately so, build products where we know the play and we know where to go. What is interesting is how we then move towards the future. And that's where my department, called Innovation Everywhere, we are there actually to go in and pump up these different normal areas with new innovation mindset. So that's actually what I'm going to go through now a little bit shortly. Is like, how do we actually go in and help the teams that are doing the police stations and so on in supercharging their innovation mindsets? Because as we said in the beginning, the world is changing rapidly under our feet. So we help teams, and that's my job here. And with the help of Anna and others, we actually build this audience-centric innovation. We show the roadmap for the rest of the business, to saying, if you are in Lego City, where can you move in the next upcoming 3-4 years? What are the trends? What are the things that are happening? And thereby helping grow the business. Because as I said before, it's really this paradigm shift that's happening. On one hand, we're really good at driving this core innovation, but what we are really looking at is how can we turn this into new business, new play, and creating the future of play. And those two things are actually starting to blend together. And that's our job as innovators in the company. And in doing so, and I think also when you go out and innovate, it's really important whenever we have been speaking, because there's always loads of ideas. But what we have learned when we're exploring new needs and exploring you can say, where to go in the world, it's always has to be a balanced progression. You cannot just go out and claim, oh, do you know what, we want to do a good play. It's always to investigate and experiment with the people. Is it desirable? Do people really want it? Is it viable? Is it a good business? Does it make sense? Can somebody pay for it? And again, of course, last but not least, can we do it? Is it feasible? Do we have the right technologies to do it? And can it be done in this way? So that's often you can say, even though it's new play, we always need to work in this holy trinity, if you will. What's also key, as opposed to, you can say, the previous process where you know exactly what you're doing, you need to work much more agile. You need to work and approve in little work cycles. Always prioritize the riskiest assumption. What can happen if? And then design for experiments to either prove it or pivot it. So meaning, either you go out, you might start out with an assumption, but you might be proven wrong by your work. So what we do is constantly to say, we have an assumption, we want to do this new play. Let's take the dots as an example. We think we can make decorative play for girls or for boys and girls, and let's go out and experiment. So in the first experiments, they didn't really get it because there was way too many tiles and it needed to be simple. So we went back and redesigned the bracelets, also, so the bracelets, and then we had something there. So it's that constantly iteration of building it. So if we add that together, then you can say the process, and I think this might be an inspiration also for you now to ideate and think about where to go in the future. It's really to start with discovering, going out and find out what's the horizon, what are we looking at, what's the world we're in, what are the jobs to be done, or what are the unmet needs that the audience has. And you start with this discovery phase, and it can actually take a long time. Then you can start defining, some areas that you can go out and talk to the consumers or people about what are the opportunity spaces you can do. And then you basically have a problem statement where you can start ideating for, making concepts and prototype and go out. That's how we work, always in these 4 Ds. Discover first, define what we're doing in order to make a problem statement. Then you can start developing the actual idea. And it's actually, as you see in this double diamond model, it is actually very important that you almost spend the equal amount of time in the first phase as in the second phase. Another thing we have been doing a lot here, as I said before, this is almost worthless, this whole process, unless you go in and do proper consumer integration. Global trends, user insights, explore, experiment, and predict together with the audience out there. And the funny thing is that we have learned ourselves almost to be design anthropologists or ethnographics. Like we're going out there almost as design researchers to find out. And the funny thing, in our innovation process, we've actually learned that the same being brave, being curious, being focused actually also works with our management, because we can use the same, explorative, curious, investigative way of asking questions. Why? If you want to remember one thing, always ask why, how, what, and so on and so forth, in order to discover good innovation. And that's where basically you can say we found that by using the same methodology as we have used to ask consumers questions, we can use the same approach for our stakeholders, for our management, to really say the same questions. What are your problems in the market? Where can you go? What do you need to do when you're rebuilding this and that? So this is really the interesting way of approaching things audience first, using some of these principles of being curious, being brave, being focused on learning from the users in our process. So that was a little bit about our process and so on, and how it all works. But back to the main question again here, in in rebuilding Ukraine, how can hopefully some of what I told now, can that be inspiring to think different? And can you think of playful ways that we can really put kids in the center of the rebuilding? And feel free now to either team up wherever you are or separate, or post it in the chat, or just shout out in here. And then we can go for that. And again, as I said before, also if you have questions or builds to the whole setup here, then I think that's it. So I think with that, I'll stop sharing, and then back to you, and maybe there's probably some questions emerging already or stuff.
Yeah, also I suggest, like, for the beginning, just like, I don't know, just to start, we have some questions from the application form, like people left some questions for you. Maybe we will start with that, and then you can just set up new questions in the chat, and just Søren will read it and answer. Okay, so the first question is, how to involve citizens into active discussion of the future vision of the cities. So actually, how to, where to start with. Like, okay, we have now the city, we have citizens. How can we initiate it, and how we can engage?
Yeah, and again here, I hope you saw some of the principles in what we've done here, and I think what is, of course, maybe a bit challenging at the time it is, I think we have learned a lot during COVID as well, how much can actually be done online. So I think interviews with online, again, I think it's actually that simple, say ethnographic or simple questions like why, how, what, and so on. Listen, and don't kind of like sell in. I think that's what we've seen. That's a good start. You need some kind of inspiration for where to go. Another really great tool we have done is to do co-creation. So you can say invite, however you can, invite a small group of people. If you can be lucky enough to find some that are a little bit influential in thinking, invite them in for a co-creation. Throw a few provocations out, to start working from. A little example of what we did here when we did our preschool. So just without being too long on it, but preschool that Anna is also working on, we have a huge issue in USA to make them understand what we're doing. So we actually invited some US Danish residents. So they were US people, but they were living in Denmark. And we invited them in for a co-creation because they were born with the US mindset, but had been exposed to the Danish way of thinking in terms of kids' upbringing. And that combo made them extremely interesting to talk to. So we basically invited them for 2 days of ideation, gave them a bunch of tools and thinking, and then threw some provocations at them saying, okay, when it comes to your kid, you want learning, what kind of learning? And then you build up the co-creation. So as an innovator, just sitting with a little group of people, throwing questions at them, getting the answers, and be inspired. I think it's often misunderstood when you involve consumers. It's not about validating. It's not about getting the consumers to say, I like your idea, and I think I will buy it. That's the most boring thing you can do. You want to design for experiments. You want to design provocations. So should a house be colorful? Should it be tall? Should it be this and that? So you want to stretch your experiments as provocations. Otherwise, you don't have a dialogue. That was a long answer to a simple question. But,
that was great. Also, the next question is it like something considering maybe architecture, just like to get your thinking? Is it appropriate to use the modularity forms and multi-vector reuse of materials in creating the city of the future? Or the contrary, should the city of the future be as personalized as possible for the needs of everyone?
I would love the last bit. That it is like, you know, it's designed. And I think actually, again, sorry to drag it back to Lego, but I think it's a hard question, but I definitely think that the city of the future should be personalized. It's like, you know, and it's back to the point again, let kids decide. And again, here, a little example, we have done, and I think actually, when we move ahead, I think maybe if somebody takes charge, I can help you get the right contact. But we have done, you know, an event where we have asked kids in local places with, you know, 1 million Lego pieces in boxes to design the city of the future. So basically just them building out and dreaming out what all these flexible spaces could be. And I think it is amazing to see what kids all the way down to 6 years can dream out when constructing cities, because they are not limited by architecture or by, you know, reusing some of the things. They are only limited by their imagination. So I think, I know it wasn't really what was asked, but I would really urge that we ask the kids how their future world would look like, or their future country.
Great, thank you. And also another one is, what are the most accessible ways of implementing users first approach for urban spaces, especially in after the war renovations?
Can you just read the first part again?
What are the most accessible ways of implementing users first approach for urban spaces?
Yeah, I think I talked to it a little bit before. I think one thing is depending on what your innovation task is here, because I think it's almost the steps, maybe that's what I can build onto it. I think first, when you want to integrate users, first, you can say it's about understanding some of the unmet needs. What's the problem? You know, what are we trying to achieve? And maybe it's quite literal in the case of Ukraine, but the point is, what's the unmet need? The second step of audience integration should really be inspiration. So again, go in, be inspired by what they do and what they think. They're not coming up with, don't expect them to come up with solutions that are, you know, copy paste and then you put them into action. But it's the way people think. It's the way you can be inspired by what they do. And that's why I'm jumping back to the previous point. That's where especially kids could inspire to think radically different. Then in the third step of audience integration, that's where you can start saying, okay, you know, is it solution A, B, or C? Then you can start validating a little bit. But I think that's really the almost a 3-step rocket here. Understand first, what are the unmet needs? Secondly, be inspired by the audience. And then thirdly, validate with the audience.
So it's like, it's something about creating new mindset and like
Yes.
rethinking the stuff that we already have, like our maybe some national features, something that like Ukrainians have now, like our customs and everything, but just bringing something new, something innovative about it. And also thinking and speaking to the audience, to the actual citizen and to kids.
Yeah.
Okay. So feel free to speak up. And please, if you have any questions, just write in the chat, or you can turn on your microphone and just ask Søren. Don't be shy. Also, if you're watching us on the Facebook, feel free to leave your ideas there. We will see them.
I can see some, there's a hand up somewhere.
Let's see. Not yet.
Oh, I can see it.
Oh, yeah, I see. Polina, you can turn on your microphone and just like ask.
Hi.
Hey.
As you've said, children are not limited, and they are just limited by their imagination. So here comes the question, how is there any possibility to keep this creativity and no limit imagination in the grown-ups, like not to kill it? Is there any like option just to save this creativity?
Yeah, this curiosity and so on. I would say, yeah, it's always hard, of course, to get to persuade them to do it, but I think what by being, by having a playful upbringing and allowing kids to dream out and to be imaginative, hopefully it fosters that it's a lifelong learner or lifelong player. I think actually, funny enough, that adults have never been more playful than they are today. So for instance, in Lego, our adult market, of buying Lego toys has been, really on the rise. Whereas as our kids, we're actually losing kids that are losing their imagination. So it's really interesting when you throw kids at it, they are imaginative, but there's so many hindrances in their daily life, being busy at school, being busy at playing games that are pre-made for you, that they forget it. So actually, as a provocation, the problem is almost the other way around, that adults, they want to keep being young and playful, at least in some areas, and kids are not enough in their zone to build that up for the future. So I think that, I know it's a poor answer to your question, but I think what I'm trying to say, that it's Lego's mission to be lifelong player, lifelong learner, and to be curious in what you do. And that's, I think, the best we can do as a company, is to really be firm in our belief on playful learning.
Thank you for your answer.
That was a great question.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. If anyone also wants to ask, you can ask in English or in Ukrainian. Just ask, we will translate if so.
Otherwise, Anna, not to throw you in there, did you have any thoughts along the way?
Yes, if nobody wants to ask any question, I can share what I done during your lecture. And I cannot find a way how I send it in the chat, so I probably just share my screen and speak a little bit of what I've done, and you let me know if you can see it or not. I will try.
Can you please turn on your video, because we can't see you?
Yes, wait a second. I'm sharing my screen. Okay.
Oh yeah.
Can you see it? It's like should be like a blank page, right?
Yes. Yeah, of course.
Okay. So let me share my video. Can you see me too?
No, just the screen. Oh yeah.
Okay. So as you know, I'm originally from Ukraine, and I familiar very much with how our city was built, and the big parts of our cities were built during Soviet times. It was built by typical projects and without people in mind, and everything is like very, very frustrating and depressive. So I guess today we have a great opportunity to start thinking how we rebuild these dull, faceless, and boring environments and exteriors into something modern, brightful, and colorful, playful. I believe in creating playful moments in limited scale spaces, like, for example, bridge underpasses, urban walls, infrastructural walls, obstacles, like unused piece of land or curbs. So let me share my few of my sketches that I made, and So you can see what I mean. For example, one of the ideas, it's like a modular blocks. It's like open-ended playful system. So keys just, it's made from very light and durable materials. So kids just could build their own spaces to play. Or for example, if we're talking about bridge underpasses, it's kind of interactive wall mural with movable pixels. So everyone who pass under the bridge could move these pixels and build their own patterns to create like ever-moving mural in the cityscape. And about if we're talking about some pieces of unused land, for example, we have a lot of these railway roads, and we have a lot of land that just very boring, very dull. We could try to think about some planting buffers, like at small areas that provide like communal spaces for social gathering, interacting, like just in a moment. People just pass by, see each other, stay, sit, play with kids, have some small chats, and it's like so we kind of inspiring them to socially interact with each other, to have some like, let's say, more nice and intimate moments like between each other. Yes, and yeah, as cherry on top, I just made like a small it's like utopia, of course, but how it could see if you implement everything in a urban landscape, if you do like I don't know, something nice and bright and colorful, and yes, like no boundaries between places and playgrounds, and everything just flows into each other, and yeah, something like that. Yeah, so yeah, that's from me, my input, and yeah, I really hope that it will inspire you guys somehow, because yes, I really hope for my country that will be like modern and even better than we was before. Yeah, so we can do it, we can build it, rebuild it, and make it like the best country in the world. Yeah, so.
Great, thank you, Anna. It really looks beautiful. And is it actually the Klitschko bridge that you draw?
No.
Looks like
if it
Klitschko
looks
bridge.
like that, it's good. I just
Great.
yeah.
And also we have another question.
Yeah.
It's a question how to find the right approach to creating public spaces if the target audience is extremely diverse with different needs and different requirements. How to meet everyone's needs without losing any individual approach.
Yeah, that's a $1 million question, I guess. Really,
Tricky.
yeah. I think, and the boring answer is diversity. Like, you know, that it's there's a space for everyone. Like it, and I think that living spaces is a living space, and I think what everyone can agree to is that there's a place for everyone, and that there's room for me. And I think it actually, reverting to a previous question regarding, is it a personalized space? And I you know, cities are often extremely practical. You know, it's all about infrastructure and how it works, and then little places pop up that are either green or does something. And I think a good example here, and now I'm out on a limb, it's nothing to do with Lego, but Berlin is a good example of where it's also so many old houses. Still, it's very worn down, but every time that there's a blank spot, instead of it being rebuilt with something, there's green popping up. There's like a little play park emerging. And it's actually quite interesting how, I think, almost without a plan, people just took over these places. It's almost like, I don't know if you heard about it. There's a place in Denmark called Christiania that was taken over by, it's a part of Copenhagen that was taken over in the late 60s, and it, by hippies in that case, and they have claimed it ever since, and it's built up a culture, and that culture is now spreading because people take ownership of those little empty spots. So you can say, again, poor answer to a very good question, but I think it's about creating ownable spaces for many people, that they have little communities. And I think this is happening everywhere in the world where people pop up. They have their own little community space and another community space that I think is not catering for everyone, but with another room, there should be a place for everyone.
Yeah, and it was just in my mind. We have in Kiev, we have similar space. It is called Samosad. It's on Kontraktova Plоща. Anna, if you know, it's in the city center, and it's actually like a piece of land which was renovated and made very, very green and very comfortable for the people who live in this area. And it was the initiative of like small group of people who just decided, okay, we are the neighbors, so let's make something very comfortable for us. And now it's also, the place is located near Kyiv Bohila Academy, so it's like in the student area. And I know that many people do yoga sometimes in this like small garden. Students just have coffee, and people just sometimes have picnics there. So it's like a great example that is already implemented. So
and it's actually a really good example, because again, part of my job, and then reverting it back to Lego, is of course to look at the world where it's moving and where the trends are going. I think what's really interesting with the world and how we view things, and also in the current situation, is how people impact. Look at both Black Lives Matter, other things that aren't in the trend. It's not politicians, it's not those who are setting the agenda, it's the people. So what has really changed in the world is that if you allow people to take over, they will act together. So you can say, by almost like, I'm really inspired to say that if only once you get there, people say, do you know what, claim the space, do what you want, and let the public make the space. I think if you can have that attitude, let people be curious, brave enough to create their own communities by giving them the spaces to do so. That would be unheard of in any country, that you will make it, you can say, user-driven rebuilding in that way. Could be really interesting to think of making these little, spots of your creation. You see it also a little bit happening in urban gardening and so on and so forth, but it's only on a small scale, because they always have to fit in what's already existing. But imagine blowing that wide open.
Yeah. And also, if you have questions, you can still ask them. You can write them in the chat. You can write them in the Facebook chat. You can ask them in English, in Ukrainian, like both languages. And also, we have some message from Polina, who asked you a question previously. She says, thank you for the illustrations to Anna. And she thinks that like many elements can be used for renovation of like Ukrainian cities for real.
Yeah.
And also, we have another question. What is the best way to develop personal creativity or innovativeness? Do you have any recipes?
Again, really good question. I think it is, there's two sides to that question. Either you can say, how do you as a person develop it? And the second one is, of course, how do you foster it in the public spaces? So very quickly, I think on the personal journey, what has worked for me is, again, actually funny enough, when Lego made these values, being curious, being brave enough to stand by what you believe in, and actually just live that out and stay curious and stay. I think that would be my best advice personally. Stay curious and be inspired by what's there, because if you are exposed to it and problems are there, be curious and be opportunistic about it. I know it sounds a little bit wishy, but I think it's about that relentless thought of doing that. In order to get the public creative, I think it's again back to that freedom to personalize, freedom to claim the space, freedom to belong in a community that does things. That could be a way to foster creativity in the open space. Anna had some really good examples of that, where you can do things where you can take ownership of how it looks today, and so on and so forth. I think a good example of, public creativity, that it looks different every day. Because I think what's often misunderstood in art pieces in city is that, oh, it's so creative because you made some kind of sculpture. But I think what I like about Anna's idea was that it's new every day. And I think that's really the point. Little things that can make people do awesome things.
Thank you. And also, I think we have like time for one last question. So if someone have question, you can just write it.
Yeah, or ideas. Was there anyone inspired ideas?
Of course.
Don't be shy.
And if not, then I have like one useful question that maybe can inspire others. Maybe you can recommend some books or films or TV series or something like this that Ukrainians can watch and be inspired of your mindset, of your approach, of like developing personal creativeness and being like brave in dreaming.
I'll have to think. Maybe Anna, you have one, but I think I will have to think a little bit about it. I can't, just on top of my head, I can't think of one. But I do urge maybe to, if you want to hear a little bit or investigate a little bit more into the value set of Lego, the Lego Foundation side and the whole value behind playful learning and so on. Because the reason it's not to shamelessly promote it, but I think what it does is it's actually a condensation of all the academia in the world about what is playful learning and how to foster creativity. You can actually find a lot of info on legofoundation.com. And let me think about the books and maybe post something. Do you have any thoughts, Anna, on that?
I cannot say any names right now, but I would recommend any series or movies about artists in the past, because they were overcoming a lot of obstacles on their ways, especially with religion, with all this they couldn't draw portraits, they couldn't draw, how they were overcoming, how they stay on their way, how they stay in their position. Yes, was brave, was curious, and it's it was the way they went through, and it's how we became what we are now, like modern artists, what we are doing right now. It's like a big army behind us, behind our shoulders. They were doing this every day heroical stuff, they were suffering for it, were dying in poverty just because they didn't want to do what they were told. And I would recommend just to find, I'm sure it's a lot of it about Leonardo da Vinci, about I just would recommend
and to support you, Anna, on that one. If you want to convert that into city spaces, think of Antonio Gaudi and how he made some things that are beyond belief still to this day, because he was brave enough and curious about nature to design something extraordinary. It's still beyond my belief how on earth he ever got allowed to build that church, Sagrada Familia.
If you're talking about Ukraine, I have a nice example. I'm not sure that we have movie or series about it, but you can read about Gorodetsky. What he was building this house with chimeras, and story of it, the story of his life. He lost a lot of values. Let's say he lost daughter, and it was like a hard life for him. But he on debris of these losses and frustration, he built something beautiful. I think it's one of the examples. Yeah, you could just connecting to Kyiv, to Ukraine. So
yeah, thank you very much for this recommendation. But like, unfortunately, we have run out of time. But it was a great pleasure to see you and to hear your lecture and your ideas. And also, I'm here just to remind everyone that this is the first lecture, and we will have 2 more coming. We will have the next lecture tomorrow with Jan Gehl, who is Danish architect. And on the 19th of May, we will have lecture with Jakob Raffen and Fredrik Lassen, who are philosophers and creators of philosophical game Politics of Nature. And you can see actually the links to the registration form in the chat. So feel free to join the next lectures, and it was a great pleasure to see you.
Yeah, thank you. And if you got some great ideas coming, we would love to see what you come up with.
yeah. Thank you, guys, and все буде Україна.
Дякую. And thank you, Lego, for supporting Ukraine in our fight. So
definitely.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
And good luck, guys. Thank you.
Good luck, thank you. Дякую всім, що приєдналися. Ми чекаємо вас на наступних лекціях. Наступна буде 12 травня з архітектором Яном Гейлом. І 19 травня це буде лекція Якоба Рафна та Фредріка Лассена, філософів. І реєстраційні форми ви можете поглянути прямо в чаті, або підписатися на сторінки Ukrainian-Danish Youth House, або Pixlab. Всім гарного вечора і зустрінемось завтра на лекції Яна Гейла. Okay, goodbye. Have a nice evening.